Thank you very much, Mark. So pillar 2, advisor as manufacturer. Basically, should advisors make stuff? There's a whole industry that creates stuff for advisors to use, but should they just make it themselves? And for this session, we genuinely have two of the best people, two of the most relevant people to talk about this, which is Anna Pollins from Fairstone, who is making a platform with FNZ as an advice firm, and Philip Martin, who co-founded Nucleus back in the noughties and now runs a decent-sized advice firm himself. So Anna, Philip, if you could join me on the sofa. So Anna, I'll go to you first. I'm sure everyone in the room wants to know, why is Fairstone building a platform?
Very good question. Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I actually wanted to start, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole when I was sort of thinking about what I was going to talk about today, and this question about should advisors stay in their lane and so on. And I ended up in the world of Google, so bear with me, Mike, you're probably thinking now, like, where's she going? Colgate. Everyone knows Colgate, the toothpaste. I don't know if anyone remembers, in the 80s they launched their own frozen food range. Interesting. Cosmopolitan magazine, the women's magazine, launched a range of yogurts. And Cheetos, you know those disgusting sort of American crisps, they launched a lip balm. Now, other than being unmitigated product disasters, what do these have in common? Well, these are examples of companies that have veered wildly outside their lanes, gone into sort of a completely different area without really thinking about who they're trying to serve, and also whether that's their area of expertise as well. There's some really good examples of people that have done it well. Dyson's a really good example who sort of expanded into other areas using their existing expertise. And you could spend hours going through all this stuff. But I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is, yeah, my argument would be that there is a case for advisors to consider this. And maybe that would have been different 5-10 years ago. And I'll talk about why Fairstone's done it and why now. Because, as I say, we might not have done this, or we definitely wouldn't have done this sort of 5-10 years ago. So Fairstone, I'm sure all of you will know, is a national independent financial advice business. We've got over 400 advisors now across about 45 different offices. And we've got about 90,000 clients. And we launched a proposition last year called Mineral. And don't ask me why we call it Mineral, but we call it Mineral. This is really a low-cost offering for clients. Probably we talked about the next generation of clients at that sort of entry point to need financial advice. In doing that, we needed a couple of things. We needed, obviously, the scale to do it, the expertise, and we also needed the technology solution as well. And that caused quite a stir, it seems, in the press when there was this announcement that we were partnering with FNZ as that sort of back office custody and administration to do that. So why did we decide to do it? As a business, and we're getting bigger, we bring in more firms. A lot of the IFA firms that I work with have got too many clients. And they're finding actually a lot of the clients that they've got, or they're being asked by their clients to look after their sons and daughters' wealth as well. They want an elegant way of saying, it's just not cost effective for you or for me to do that. So that's one of the reasons, and that's becoming more of a problem. How do we help our advisors with their capacity so they can focus on the clients that need that real, what I call kind of traditional, full-fat financial advice, financial planning, but also, we don't like turning away clients that might need advice, but just not necessarily the same level as some with more complex needs. Also, we work with, and we do a lot of work with NHS junior doctors. We go around the country talking to them, and there's a big sort of swathe of people who will be future high earners, but are just at the sort of early stages of their career, needing protection and so on. So we were seeing there, again, they don't really need full-fat financial advice. We weren't set up to really help them in the right way. And then the third thing is we get a lot of inquiries through through search engine and so on for people. They just weren't right for our advisors. So we could sort of see this compounding issue, but also opportunity to do something about it, which is really where Mineral came about. And it's a low-cost, remote service, so it's for people that are happy to have simpler needs. If it's a complex case, then we have to pass it back out to one of our advisors. And in doing that, with a limited advice scope, you kind of remove the variability and you can, I guess, control the cost as well through doing it through a single platform. We've got, 13 billion on all the different retail platforms out there, and there's no plans for that to change. But often advisors have to change their process to fit with that platform. Where we're trying to control the process, in this particular scenario, we needed to find a platform to do it. So that's why we chose to partner, and FNZ in particular, at the time, the tech wasn't there 5 years ago or even 3 years ago. It's evolving and will continue to evolve, and we'll monitor the market as well. But FNZ, the financial strength, we've got assets already on there, so we're a proven partner, and we want someone that's going to be around in 10 plus years as well.
Thank you, Anna. Philip, as it says on the screen, you helped launch a platform 17 years ago. Would you be advisor as a manufacturer now?
Well, no, broadly. I mean, this says advisor, obviously, and that covers a multitude of different businesses of different models and different size and different complexities, which I'll maybe come back to. I mean, a bit like Anna, I went back and thought, well, what examples can I think of here? And I immediately latched onto a film. On the 1st of August 1980, a film was launched in the UK at its premiere from ITC, which for the older people in the room was Lou Grade's entertainment company. Bobby Reed's here, he'll definitely remember Lou Grade, I would think. And this was supposed to be their guaranteed entry into big studio films. It cost $40 million to make, which was obviously a colossal sum at that time, and it limped through the box office. Not even a post-Star Wars Alec Guinness could save it, and out it plopped at $7 million of return, which is obviously a horrendous return on the investment that had been made at the time. So much so that Lou Grade gave up movies. And later on he was asked about this, and very famously he said, raise the Titanic, he said, as he reflected on it. He said, it would have been considerably cheaper if I'd lowered the Atlantic, which I think is a perfect example of risk and reward. So I think that's my principal thing here. I think if you look at I think it's a very general question, and obviously advice businesses are done for different reasons. Some people are running them to generate income. Some people are running them to generate capital value because they either want to have a transaction or some other reason. But clearly, on the plus side, manufacturing platforms will give access to margin. It potentially gives greater control of the client proposition, although I would argue quite heavily it doesn't. I mean, it'd be interesting to know how different your front end ends up looking with FNZ and the clout that you have with FNZ relative to its other partners. In principle, it could give some continuity, and obviously in a very rapidly changing platform market with businesses that have been private, gone public, gone private, and been taken over and so on, potentially that may be a plus side. On the downside, I think it's got a very significant change to capital adequacy. It's very expensive to do properly. So if you have those permissions and they're on your balance sheet, you can outsource all you like, but it's still your neck on the line if you don't do it properly. And I've run that model. I've been a director of an ACD business that did that. That ACD business is different, obviously, because you're dealing with transfer agency and custody and so on. But for the best part, even mirroring these activities has got a £2.5 million cost base. It'd be cheaper on a platform, but it's big. And I just can't get myself to a position that says the risk is worth taking on for the potential return for what is, in essence, a handful of basis points, other than for really, really significant sized businesses. I can think of at least a dozen things I'd rather spend £100 worth of capital in my business that would generate an infinitely better return with lower risk than taking on manufacturing margin. But we'd be a medium-sized business, and so I think for small and mid-sized businesses, I think it's absolutely bonkers. I think it is a solution that's scrabbling around out there, frankly, looking for a problem, but I think that's different for an advice business that's big and scaled.
Just quickly, you mentioned it's mad if you're only if you're a large business, does it make sense? You have about 30 advisors, I think.
Yeah.
And I think FCA data says there's 47 or 50 firms that have more than 50 advisors. So you kind of implying that there's only maybe even half of those that will find this appropriate.
I think it's really niche. I mean, I think manufacturing at this end, to do it properly, for the risk you take on, you have to be a scaled business, both in assets and advisors. I mean, just to give some comparables here. I mean, Transact the daddy of them all, is what, about 50 billion of assets under management, clears about 25 and makes a margin of about 12 bips, on that, broadly, that sort of quantum. AJ Bell is 62, 63, something like that, and I think its last published number, it was clearing 8 basis points from its platform underlying margins. So go do the maths. I mean, in the end, the risk that's been taken on for a handful of basis points just feels like utter madness to me. I think I can see a potential for us to sleep into really bad customer outcomes here down the line as people rush to get on that bandwagon.
So Anna, how are you, if Philip is right there, how are you trying to avoid those bad outcomes that could potentially come down the line? I
think Philip's right in the sense, be careful about jumping on a bandwagon, and to my earlier point, think about why you're trying to do it, and do you have the expertise and the skill set in-house to do it as well? Is it just simply about a brand exercise? Is it about just making more margin? Is it about solving a customer need? Go through that process. I also think, what the market looks like in 5 years' time, for example, as tech evolves, there are these, we're kind of a hybrid. We haven't gone down. We're not the custodian here. We're not having to take on that responsibility. So that's there's a sort of a sliding scale, I think. I'm going to quote Mr. Barrett, and I'll probably get in trouble for doing that, but he mentioned earlier on about that the Venn diagram. Some financial planning businesses contain financial planners only, or there or thereabouts, and some sort of larger financial advice firms have the product management, the governance, the risk in-house. As you get bigger, you sort of bring that in-house. And so I think when you talk about different skill sets, it's a very different skill set being an investment manager to being a financial planner. To running a business is quite a different skill set. And some people are really good at wearing all those hats, but it's really hard to wear all those hats. So how many hats have you got in your business before you start thinking about this? So that would so I think it's a good thing to explore in the right circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, I'd maybe take issue with slightly, unless the world has changed, but my understanding here is that while you might not be doing day-to-day custody, that is, you're outsourcing that to custodian, you absolutely, with permissions, will be on the hook for how that is undertaken if something goes wrong. So therefore, you need an in-house supervision of that activity to mirror what's happening elsewhere. Yeah. And that's where I think, that's what I mean by doing it properly. There'll be plenty of people who won't do that and who will just trust that the custodian does their job properly, or that DDs are collected on the correct date and properly applied to the right funds, etc., etc., etc. But I have presided over a number of admin areas in my life, including my first one, which I think had 3.5 man-years of backlog. And believe me, it's not a great situation. It would be one of life's great ironies if I finished my career in financial services with advisors delivering the same appalling client service for underlying assets that they used to berate life companies for doing so. And I think there's potentially a danger of that happening. I genuinely do.
Anna, Philip's mentioned the word risk a lot in the last 10 minutes. How are you mitigating any risks that come along with this type of venture?
I mean, risk is pretty broad. As I say, for Fairstone, we've set this up under a separate reg entity. So we've got the core of our, which is our IFA business. This is a separate business where we run all our investment solutions. So Fairstone's a manufacturer anyway. We have our own. It depends what we mean by manufacturer, and we won't spend hours debating that, but we've got our own back office, a proprietary back office system. We run model portfolio services with partner DFM, so this isn't our first foray into manufacturing. But in terms of the risks, well, clearly we did a lot of work in terms of making the decision, but 2, selecting the right partner, 3, putting the right risk and governance framework in place to do that, and just having that experience and the right people to be able to do that in-house, and using external expertise is how you do that. But it's not a decision that you should take lightly, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, genuinely, it's a horses for courses here. I think for a scaled business, not just about where Fairstone is, but where it has aspirations to get to, it could make perfect economic sense to properly manage those risks, take the cost base on, and generate the additional margin that comes from running that. I totally get that. But in my business, I could make an infinitely superior return if I used that 100 quid to finance a new advisor through, from the age of 25 through to 30 and underpin their earnings. I could make it back in half the time if I invested in more back office tech that helped take costs out of my operation. There's so many other ways that money could be deployed within the business. So for me, it comes down to a real economic argument. It's we're trying to build something of value and of scale, and there are just better ways for us to spend our cash.
You say horses for courses. your horse, unique financial planning. What does that have to look like for you to consider this as a viable option?
I'm not sure it ever would. I think the IRR is always going to be better for me to expand my capacity with advisors than it is to go down this sort of a route. We still sit here, 67 million people in the country, and 22,000 people giving advice. That's the opportunity, isn't it? And that's always going to be better in our business. I think it would be totally off our radar. I do slightly worry that, as you get towards a transaction, I think people are looking at, look what I've done to my margin. Look at the 3.5 bips I'm bringing in additionally from running this platform. If I were buying that business and it weren't done properly, I'd be lopping 7 bips off for the risk that you're carrying in doing so. It could actually be net value destructive go down that route rather than actually value accretive.
Do you agree with that, Anna?
I think, so what we've done is slightly different. So as I mentioned, we've got assets on a multitude of retail platforms. We don't expect that to move. This is about a new offering and, for a cohort of people that don't currently take financial advice. So it's slightly different to if you're trying to transition your entire business onto a single platform. Yeah. So as I say, we're probably on somewhere in the middle on that sliding sort of scale of, completely sort of focusing on financial planning all the way through to, actually your whole business and everything you do is on a single platform. That's not the direction of travel for us. So as I say, it's trying to create a newer market of people, not waiting for clients to inherit wealth, by which point they're probably almost in decumulation themselves, actually for people that are at that earlier stage, create capacity for our advisors, grow that. And also, to a certain extent, we know there's a challenge. There's the advice gap, there's the advisor gap. There aren't enough advisors. It's also a really neat solution for us in-house to put our graduates through, because it's remote advice, it's a controlled process. We've got 100% supervision because it's all sort of over the phone and on video. We can actually home grow more of our advisors that way as well, and that's part of the plan for doing this.
Just a reminder for everyone in the room, get your questions in. I'm getting a few in on the iPad now, and if you're at home, remember to type them in on your device as well. Anna, you mentioned a few minutes ago that we've been focusing this advisor as manufacturer debate on advisor as platform, but it could mean pretty much anything. And you say you've got your own back office system. Mm-hmm. What parallels have there been in building this platform compared to running your own back office and building that first?
I think so. The back office system that we use is just designed around the Fairstone advice process for Fairstone advisors. So it just gives us control. We built that. The business has been running for 14 odd years. We sort of built it as we go. And I think like anyone who's got a system, I'm sure we will be starting on a blank sheet of paper today and building our new financial advice firm of the future. There are things now we're having to tweak and adjust, but it just gives us control of the advice process. And with some of the other back office systems out there, advisors still have to build their process to fit around it. Ours is just designed to help kind of create efficiency for advice. So I wouldn't say it's very easy to draw parallels just because it's been running such a long time, other than it just obviously helps us remove some variability to the advice process. From an investment perspective, we're a whole of market, but from the advice process and the advice journey. Other than that, a lot of that investment was done a long time ago, so it's probably not that easy to compare.
And Philip, you said something earlier, you said it was horses for courses, and then a couple of minutes later you said that you wouldn't ever do it. So would your horse never be right for this course? Is that what you're saying? You just can't see a world in which you would oversee this kind of transition? I don't think so.
I just genuinely do not see the appeal for small and middle-sized advisory businesses.
But if you're bigger?
If I was, I guess if I were at Fairstone's size, if we were at 13 billion, and I thought I could do it efficiently and do it well and capture the same sort of 10 basis points that the two companies I mentioned earlier were getting to, then you'd investigate it. But there's still a pool for the capital in the business, isn't it? And if there are better places that the capital can be deployed, then it feels to us as directors of our business far more sensible to go down that route. Principally an advice business is about engaging with clients, finding out what they need, building a plan, executing it, and correcting it when it goes wrong, as it will from time to time. It's not about collecting DDs and putting them in the right place. There's other people that can do that badly over there. And continue to do so.
I've had an interesting question in saying, what's the difference between advisor as platform and then advisor as provider and then provider as advisor, and it's just got that kind of narrative switch. And where do you see the difference there? You know, there's plenty of providers at the moment buying up sizable advisor firms and doing it that way. Yeah,
I mean, it all ends, in the end, it ends up to the same vertically integrated place, doesn't it? But it's coming from different starting points, I guess. I mean, you'll have detected that my critique is around the inappropriateness of smaller firms seeking to capture that margin, because I just don't think it makes any sense to do so. I think, obviously, your big institutions seeking to buy into distribution, they already have that infrastructure already in place. Although many of them have not necessarily come from having a platform to begin with. You know, there's more activity in this space from asset managers than there is necessarily from the life companies and the platform providers.
Where do you see yourself in that kind of narrative, Anna?
Well, we're an advice firm first and foremost. So I'm not, in terms of the question about kind of provider with becoming advisor. I mean, again, it goes back to kind of what they're trying to achieve. Is it a restricted proposition? Are they trying to where are they trying to sort of sit in the value chain? And I suppose with consumer duty, I didn't want to mention that. You know, it does. If it hasn't already, it should force you to kind of break apart all pieces of the puzzle and think about that whole value chain and, you know, where everything sits and are there better ways to put it together again. It's just all about the motivations behind it as well, and you know, just thinking, oh, that looks like a great opportunity, I can control some more advisors, let's buy it, versus actually we've got something really good, we think we could scale, we think we could offer something genuinely different, solve a problem, let's explore it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, history will show that if you don't turn those businesses into restricted, you will end up with the outcome that you were least expecting. In the number of life company business plans that have bought advice businesses and IFA businesses predicated on the fact that they could uplift their business by 5%, and then seen it halve as people just didn't want to support them. I mean, that's tended to be the outcome.
Got a good question in here, which is if this all goes wrong at some point, who's due to compensate the clients, Fairstone or FSZ? Does it matter what goes wrong and then the hook's on either party, or is it just stop with Fairstone because you're delivering the service?
No, so it depends on what goes wrong. So obviously Fairstone's responsible for the advice. Fairstone's also responsible for the investment management in this particular case. So as I mentioned, it's a limited sort of proposition. So there's only certain investment solutions and funds and so on. So Fairstone is the advisor there. In terms of safe custody, then we have an agreement with FNZ and sort of the mechanics of that. So it just depends slightly on if it's client money handling issues, for example, that sits with FNZ. There's how we've constructed it that way. Yeah.
How was it constructing that with FNZ? Was there a lot of debate and decision? Because I'm assuming if people think about going through this process, they might not know what's to come. And was it tough figuring out who's responsible for who? All those details in the contracts. We've
got a team of experts that are used, that have worked in the platform market, that have worked in product providers, that have worked in other places. And again, to my earlier point, you've got to know what questions to ask, absolutely, and to think about that and to know what you're going into. So there was a lot of work done, probably a year's worth of planning done to get there. And anyone who's thinking about it, happy to kind of chat to them offline about it and share our experiences if people are considering it, and also if they think whether it's the right thing to do. It might be that, as I said, there's lots of different advisor as platform, white label can be quite different things. So it's just trying to understand what it is that you want, and also where you're going to get, what are you actually getting as well.
And Philip, coming to you, what areas would you rather gain more control in rather than the platform? Advisors and manufacturer, what would you rather build to gain more control over the advice process or investment management, whatever it may be?
Well, I mean, I think the one motivation in doing this that I do have a sympathy with is the ability to start to control far better the client experience, which will be a frustration to every single person in this room at various different points in their professional career, where they've had no control over the garbage that's dropped through the letterbox or into the inbox of their clients. And I have a deep sympathy to that. So anything that enables us with our scale to hone that in a better way, to make it better for the clients, is desirable. But in terms of where we are just now and the ability to bespoke things, we're far better off doing that with our own technology and our own business than seeking to get that delivered to us, if you see what I mean. So I think that is the key part of it. Anything that strengthens our relationship with the client will add value to the business because as it is valued, it will reflect itself in that way, in the same way as risks will devalue it.
Sorry, that's a good question.
Yeah, of course.
Do you have a chosen platform or one or two platforms that you tend to use?
Yeah, I mean, the bulk of our assets sit on 2 platforms,
Yeah.
and we are a restricted proposition, so we'd be Openwork's second largest firm. So that had a restriction in the choice of, there was a choice of platforms, it wasn't a single platform, but the bulk are on 2. And the overwhelming majority of our assets are actually on 1. On a platform that we're broadly comfortable with. Our business would be mass market, slightly above that, with a sliver of it, with a wealth part of the business that has more complex solutions. So we're not needing a lot of functionality from a platform. I just need it to collect money, put it in the right place and tell you about it, which is pretty much fundamentally what a platform is, and always was.
And Anna, as an independent firm, building something for your advisors to use, how do you make sure that culturally that doesn't become, even not on if it's not on paper, but how do they stay independent, in their minds when they're giving advice, doing what they're doing? How do they make sure that they're not becoming restricted because of cultural matters and pressures from above?
So as I mentioned, this particular offering is run under a separate entity with a separate group of advisors. So some of our firms can, if they want to, refer clients to that. So if they've got, son comes along, needs a protection case or whatever it might be, they can refer it into that core advice team, and their core advice team, that's an internal thing, but the Mineral will service them. So in time, that platform may well be available to our advisors, but it will be instead of, it's limited in what is available on there, the way we've structured it. So it will only work for certain types of, it's a specific target market. So it depends, as I say, we're agnostic really about which platform our advisors use. Advisors, so we work with firms who've got assets from every single platform out there. But the only view that we take is what was the client, their basic client, informed client, advanced client, what was the target market? If they're on a Transact, do they need all of the, do they need that, or do they need a really simple platform solution at a lower cost? So look at the client and then determine, and that's how we operate anyway. So I don't think we need to change because we've already got that separation there. And this is more about bringing in new clients into this solution rather than trying to eat into it's trying to free up capacity for our advisors so they can keep doing what they do really well.
And just a quick last question for people maybe considering this. We saw on the chart that people are perhaps not considering it, but wondering what it's all about. How much did you have to hire in expertise to make all this? Or did you have, because of the size of your firm, did you have the expertise in-house? Or did you have to hire a lot of people, create new departments to say, right, we're going to do this in the right way. With Consumer Duty coming along, this has to be done properly.
So the only hiring we had to do was to hire some more advisors in to service this particular cohort. Everything else was done in-house. I say that we worked with a consultant to help us sort of, when we were validating the decision, was a Cheeto-flavoured lip balm the right place? Where to go? So to validate that and to sort of do the work from a risk perspective, we did, and we partnered. There's a compliance services firm, obviously have responsible for our own compliance, but we use as a sort of third line. So we went to them as well to sense check stuff. But all the individuals that were involved, we already had in the business.
So would you disagree with the notion that this type of venture is resource intensive, or is it just that your business is in the right position?
It's resource intensive, absolutely. We just had the resource and the ability to flex that to do it. But we could also see the ability to scale it quite quickly. Otherwise, you wouldn't do it.
Lovely. Well, that's all we have time for today on this session anyway. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you.
Round of applause, please, for our guests.